Again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this important conversation on transparency and trust in climate governance, empowering communities for participatory and just climate solutions. That is the title of this session. I'll read it again. Transparency and trust in climate governance, empowering communities for participatory and just climate solutions. The urgency of the climate crisis demands action, but not just any action. For climate solutions to be just, sustainable, and effective, they must be built on transparency, accountability, and meaningful community participation. Yet, across Africa and beyond, we continue to see gaps in trust between governments, institutions, and the communities most affected by climate change. This session we have here is about bridging those gaps. We will explore how transparent governance can foster accountability, empower local communities, and drive more inclusive decision-making in climate action. Through real-world examples, practical insights, and dynamic discussions, we hope to achieve a few key outcomes. These outcomes are strengthening the link between transparency and trust in climate policies and governance, highlighting community-led solutions that demonstrate the power of participatory approaches, explore actionable strategies to ensure that vulnerable populations are not just consulted, but actively engaged in shaping climate policies. Today, we're using a discussion format called the open chair. This is how it's gonna work. So we'll start with a panel conversation, but you'll notice there are a few extra seats, empty seats. So I have a panel of 5 people. So we have 2 extra seats. The open chairs are there for you. At any point, if you have any thought to share or an experience that adds to the discussion, you can step up and take any of the open chairs. You will have a chance to speak, engage with the panel, and be a part of the conversation. This format is made for a discussion to be more interactive, inclusive, and insightful. So don't be shy. Again, I urge you, don't be shy. If you feel inspired to contribute, we encourage you to step up. To ground this discussion in reality, we have a panel of experts who will provide insights into real-world examples of why transparency and participation in climate governance matters and how they can be achieved. Their experiences serve as that inclusive climate action is not just an aspiration we have, something we can and put into practice. This is not just a conversation, it's a call to action. Work together to build trust, center communities, and create climate solutions that leave no one behind. Let's get this show on the road. I would like to start by inviting my first panelist. Fredrick Ouma is the chairperson of the ICAT Advisory Committee, a lead negotiator for the African group at the UNFCCC COP. With extensive expertise in climate governance and transparency, he plays a crucial role in shaping global climate reporting and policy frameworks. Fred, please join us on stage. Next, mic check. So next, we have Ivy Magoma, a dedicated communications and knowledge management specialist at the Adaptation Consortium. She focuses on locally led adaptation, ensuring grassroots communities have access to knowledge and best practices for building climate resilience. Please give Ivy a round of applause as she goes on stage. We will also welcome Rabie Khamlichi, the Director General of Services for the Tangier-Tetouan-Al region and head of the Observatory Project, With extensive experience in regional governance, he will share insights on how institutions can build public trust through open information sharing and participatory decision-making. Key pillars for ensuring transparency and accountability. That is Mr. Rabie up on the stage. Joining us as well is Dr. Misrar Wafa, a climate and policy expert passionate about just transitions and equitable climate finance. As the campaigns and policy lead at CAN Africa, she works closely with African leaders and youth to drive impactful climate action and inclusive development. Dr. Misrar, please take a step on the stage. Thank you very much. And finally, rounding out our panel is Isaac Aidoo, a development planner with over 12 years of experience in governance, transparency, and social accountability. He was instrumental in bringing Sekondi-Takoradi into the Open Government Partnership and currently leads efforts on infrastructure transparency in Ghana. Mr. Isaac, please join us on stage. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much. As I read our session on transparency, we're going to have a round of questions for each of our panelists. These are our experts in this room. Not to say that the rest of you are not experts. I know my audience is as well very expert as well. All right, so I would like to start with Fredrick Ouma. And he will be addressing matters policy frameworks for transparency, climate governance. And the first question to Fredrick would be, how can national and local governments design climate policies that ensure transparency and meaningful community participation? Can I please have a mic on stage, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the great introductions. I'm going to just spend the first 2 minutes to just introduce myself a little bit further. On transparency, as we're here to engage. My work on transparency started with the Transparency International. I was at Transparency International doing climate governance work for about 6 years, after which I transitioned to government. I was done with CSO, so I decided to go and work with government a little bit. That is where I currently work. Within that time, I've also been leading transparency negotiations under the UNFCCC as one of the lead transparency negotiators for Africa. Recently, I was requested or elected to chair the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency, an initiative under UNOPS that works collaboratively with countries to ensure that we are implementing the enhanced transparency framework. Within the government, I am privileged to manage a unit that is responsible for government transparency under the UNFCCC. So I'm in charge of reporting to the UNFCCC how we are implementing climate action within the country, both on action and support. At the UNFCCC, I also sit in the consultative group of experts, a constituted body responsible for capacity building on transparency. So that is a brief about me, which means I have answers to all your questions, having worked in CSO, having worked in government, but also part of the UN process on transparency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fredrick. I made a mistake. I needed to allow my panelists to tell us what they do and how, why I call them experts for this specific session, right? So thank you very much, Fredrick. As you've heard, he has answers to all of our questions. So please, shoot as many questions to Fredrick. I will go to Ivy. Ivy, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do.
Thank you, Christine and my colleague panelists. My name is Ivy Magoma. I work at Adaptation Consortium in Kenya, where our work focuses on inspiring and empowering communities to be able to lead climate action at the local level. And we have been able to do this through the County Climate Change Fund mechanism, which is a mechanism that is established throughout the country at the moment, but it was piloted in 5 counties, which are subnational governments for us, for those who are not Kenyans. The mechanism enables our communities to be able to actively and meaningfully participate in locally led adaptation. And how does it do this? It provides a legislative and policy framework through which we are able to devolve climate finance and also decision-making processes to the lowest planning units, which are ward levels in Kenya. It does support to it establishes a fund that is capacitated by the county governments through their development budgets. And this fund is utilized entirely or exclusively for climate action. But these climate actions have to be decided by these communities first. So it does establish institutions at the community level and the county level, which often meet and decide what climate actions they want to be funded from that kitty. And then it also accommodates climate information services, whereby we're able to inculcate climate information services as we integrate it with indigenous knowledge as well. And finally, it allows communities to participate in the monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of these solutions that they had actually prioritized. So yeah, currently it's being scaled out in the entire country through the FLOCA program, and we do hope that it continues to empower our communities to participate in locally led adaptation and generally climate action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivy. I would like to give all of you a moment to just put on your translating kits because Mr. Rabie speaks in French. We don't want to miss what he says. Thank you very much.
Merci Christine pour votre aimable présentation. Bonjour tout le monde, ravi d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. Je suis Rabie Khamlichi, le directeur général du Conseil de la région de Tangier-Tetouan-Al au Maroc. Je suis aussi le responsable de l'Observatoire régional de vie stratégique et d'intelligence territoriale. Notre plan d'action au sein de la région comme étant une entité de collectivité territoriale de notre pays. Ça fait partie des 12 régions. Nous sommes en train d'exécuter un plan d'action de 2 milliards de dollars. Et l'un des axes est un axe dédié au développement durable et au changement climatique. Nous avons plusieurs programmes concernant la protection contre les inondations, faire face à la sécheresse, aussi éviter les incendies des forêts, des plans d'action pour accompagnement des populations rurales pour les stabiliser et éviter la migration climatique des zones ruraux vers les villes de la région. Donc un tas de choses dont on peut discuter par la suite, mais j'ai préféré de focaliser sur une expérience bien déterminée pour que le partage soit plus efficace, tenant compte du temps réservé à notre échange. Donc je vais revenir par la suite sur ce projet et merci infiniment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabie. I would like to go to Dr. Misrar Wafa.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Wafa Misrar. I am the campaigns and policy lead for CAN Africa. CAN is the Climate Action Network, and it's the largest network of civil society organizations working on climate justice and social justice. And it's one of the constituencies under the UNFCCC under INGO. I am also the North Africa representative of KAYAK. KAYAK is the Consortium of African Youth in Agriculture and Climate Change, where we're doing a lot of work by engaging youth-led organizations working in agriculture and climate change to be engaged more in the policies discussions, because it's very important to know what is going on at the policy level, and I'll be probably giving more insights about that later. For my PhD, I have a PhD in environmental chemistry. I've been working on the treatment of wastewater and its reuse in irrigation, I would say as a sort of adaptation to climate change. I am based in Morocco, and Morocco is a region where those water scarcity is one of the challenges that we are facing. And then one of the solutions that were made is to reuse the non-conventional water resources that we have in the region, which are either to go to wastewater, to reuse of wastewater, or the desalination, of course. But desalination is still a very expensive technology, and for that, wastewater was one of the solutions that was discussed, and I was mainly working on during my PhD, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Misrar. I'd like to go to Isaac. Isaac, please tell us about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Isaac Aidoo from Sekondi-Takoradi, Ghana. Sekondi-Takoradi is a local assembly, and I am a development planner by profession, and I've been working with the Metropolitan Assembly for the past 13 years, rising to the rank of Senior Development Planning Officer. Before 2022, I was appointed to lead an EU-funded sustainable partnership project. And through that project, we started community-led and school climate solutions, where we have so far established climate change clubs in basic schools. We have 17 of these climate change clubs in basic schools to, inculcate climate issues in them, for them to also go out to educate people. And as part of the program, the schools have been planting fruit trees on their compounds, and we also brought on board farmers, and we have established what you call a demonstration farm under the program to train farmers on climate smart production technology under this center, where farmers can come, the youth also can come and learn about how they can use climate smart production technology in the urban areas to equip them. We are also supporting fishmongers on how to use eco-friendly ovens to preserve their fish, and all these part of the community-led climate solutions that you've been doing. We've also been working with civil societies who are also championing climate actions in the metropolis, like the Friends of the Nation. We have been working with them for the past 10 years on climate issues, and through this initiative, we, as the Metropolitan Assembly, decided to scale it up to prepare a consolidated plan. And we have come out with what you call the CCAP, Sustainable Energy Access and Climate Action Plan, which we prepared last year to help guide the metropolis to address issues when it comes to climate change. So I'm going to share some of the lessons that we went through. And as part of the work I'm also doing, I'm also leading the COST, the Infrastructure Transparency Project in Sekondi-Takoradi, to help to also bring about, to promote transparency and accountability in the delivery of public infrastructure in Sekondi-Takoradi, which we are currently scaling it up to the national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my dear panelist. As eager as I was when I started the question to Fredrick, I would like to reread that question to him. Fredrick, please share your thoughts on how can the national and local governments design climate policies that ensure transparency and meaningful community participation.
Thank you, Christine. And I'll try to be brief so that we have enough time to engage as well, because time has also quite gone. But in the context of policy and local governments, there are three fundamental issues that we take into consideration. And one of them, of course, has always been transparency and open communication. The second one, of course, which Magoma will speak to better, has always been meaningful community participation, whatever meaningful means in that context. The number three, of course, has been what is the role then of the local governments and communities in that policy arrangement. If you come to the first one, it revolves around four main issues. One, of course, is putting the policies in place. And Kenya, you know, has tried to model anything good that has ever existed. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in is the decentralization of government, which we think facilitates engagement of communities in policy development. So you have to make sure that there are policies and that the policies are available to the public. Secondly, of course, that is also very important, has always been, how do you ensure that the people you are trying to integrate are able to understand your policies? Are they written in language they can understand? And are you deliberately engaging your communities to be able to understand the policy framework that you've put in place? The third one, of course, revolves around the audit process. Because unless you have an independent audit process for the policy framework you've put in place, then it is very difficult to ascertain transparency and open communication. The second most important thing is meaningful community participation, and this is where the problem has been. We've had a number of litigations questioning the level of public participation and whether it was meaningful in the first place. And this is one of the areas that even within government we are struggling with, because one, you have a very competent community, but they're competent within their own context, in that their engagement in the policy framing at that level can only be facilitated if, one, it is done in the language they can understand, because not all of them have gone through the formal education system and understand the languages that you understand, though they are very competent people who tell you what they want. But two, also the integration of the diversity in the context of policy development, and ensuring that the people you seek to engage, you start with some form of capacity building to enhance their engagement, so that you can tick the meaningfulness of the engagement, because you took in their comments and you integrated that in their feedback. And then finally, of course, has always been, what then is the role of those local governments and communities in the implementation? And this is something we've piloted based on what was piloted by the other consortium under the Financing Locally Led Climate Action Program. My appreciation of that process revolves around two things. One, we were very clear, even when we were doing the policy framing for local governments, that you have to be deliberate in ensuring you have community-level institutional arrangement. And we called them ward planning committees, community planning committees, whatever you wanted to call them. But based on the first part of the implementation of the projects last year, you have a conflict between facilitating that institutional framing, but also dealing with governance within the local government level, because the political leaders want to feel like they're in charge of setting the agenda. They're in charge of driving the initiatives at that level. How do they retain that responsibility of targeting what they promised in their manifesto while taking into account the input by communities? So this remains to be seen how it is going to evolve. But most importantly, the fact that the policy framing provided for that space, for us, was the best institutional structure we could come up with to ensure that communities had a role to play in the implementation of mitigation and adaptation actions as designed, but also had a mechanism, a feedback mechanism with the mainstream government at that particular level, which of course takes me to the final thing on this that revolves around local adaptation and mitigation planning. Unless you have county-level climate change adaptation and mitigation plans or strategies, it is very difficult to engage in the implementation of these policies and strategies, the communities that you are working with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. While we let that marinate, matters policy frameworks, I would like to ask Ivy, as you've heard from my experience, she has worked with mostly community-led climate solutions. Ivy, I would like to ask, with your experience, how can we empower marginalized communities to take lead in shaping climate policies while ensuring their voices are effectively represented in international climate discussions?
Thank you, Kristen. That is a very important discourse to have, actually. And yes, maybe I'll just reiterate what my colleague Fred has been saying. For communities to be empowered to participate in these conversations, it has to begin with actual representation. And by that, we mean them being part of the conversation and being at the table as we make these decisions. And they may sit on the table, but if they are not able to meaningfully participate in the conversation, it means they're just there for cosmetics and optics. So that leads us to what then is our role as a society, as government, civil society, in ensuring this meaningful participation. Then the onus is upon us to train these communities, to build their capacities, to ensure that they have access to information about climate change. This then ensures they understand what they are talking about, they understand what climate change is, what its impacts are on their daily lives, on their livelihoods. That then leads them to actually support in these policy frameworks, to support in identifying solutions that they know will meet their specific needs. Apart from that, it is also about ensuring that they have participated. How then does this translate into actual tangible action? It is about our governments and our other partners providing funding for these local solutions that these communities identify. Because it will be pointless for them to participate in the conversation, maybe support in the identification of the solutions or participate in the risk assessments and all that, and then at the end of the day, they develop the action plan and it does not get financed for those actual actions. So for us, being able to provide that financing right down to the community level ensures that these communities are able to reap and get the impacts that, or maybe get this, for lack of a better word, they're able to reap the what is it called? Yes, they're able to reap the benefits of their actions. And finally, it is also about supporting these communities as they give us feedback. Because communities understand their challenges. They have their local knowledge at the local level. These are things they've done for very many years. So it is about us giving them a platform to also integrate the indigenous and local knowledge in these actions and these climate solutions that we are proposing for them. And we provide a pathway for them to provide feedback to us as actors. If they have grievances, we ensure that we have an adequate grievance redress mechanism so that these communities feel heard and feel that their solutions are also being considered in the eventual actions that we choose to take. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivy. For those who have just joined us, I want to be considerate. Allow me to repeat what our title is, because as you can hear, the conversations are about empowering our communities. The title for this session is Transparency and Trust in Climate Governance, Empowering Our Communities for Participatory and Just Climate Solutions. This revolves around the communities we have in our respective countries. How are we able to listen to them? How are we able to tackle the problems, to integrate them? Some of them may not have education. Some of them, as Ivy has said, have indigenous practices that they have used for years and years. How do we then integrate them into the new technologies, into the new language that we're speaking, into the things we are learning and things that are coming up in this moment? I would like to go to Mr. Rabie, who has done a project in Morocco. Mr. Rabie, I would like to, again, please take, wear your translation kits, just so we're able to understand him. Mr. Rabie, please tell us, how has your region approached climate governance, and what tools have you implemented to support this approach?
Merci pour votre question. J'ai prévu pour cette question un exposé, mais malheureusement, je ne peux pas le projeter, mais quand même, je vais essayer de donner les grandes lignes pour savoir à quel niveau nous avons pris en considération les éléments évoqués ultérieurement par mes amis qui ont intervenu avant moi. Bien évidemment, j'ai préféré de parler d'un projet spécifique, pour être concret et ciblé et donner de la matière pour notre discussion aujourd'hui. C'est-à-dire, je ne vais pas parler de l'ensemble des actions qu'on est en train de mener, mais surtout d'un projet bien déterminé, celui de service climat et énergie, qui est un projet qu'on est en train de décliner actuellement. Mais avant de parler de projet en lui-même, j'aimerais bien partager avec vous une petite idée sur notre région. La région de Tangier-Tetouan-Al est l'une des 12 régions de notre pays et s'étend sur une superficie de 17 000 km², avec 4 millions d'habitants et avec bien sûr un PIB régional qui est alentour de 12,3 milliards de dollars. En ce qui concerne l'environnement au sein de notre région est bien connue par sa biodiversité. Nous avons 21 sites d'intérêt biologique sur 130 000 hectares, 2 parcs nationaux, et on a le premier parc national avec une superficie totale de à peu près 100 000 hectares. Aussi, nous avons des longues côtes, et on a le privilège d'avoir des côtes et sur la Méditerranée et sur l'Atlantique, parce que notre région, c'est l'extrême nord du Maroc. Donc, nous avons 447 kilomètres linéaires de côte. Et bien sûr, nous avons aussi une couverture forestière très, très dense, parce que nous sommes une région montagneuse. Donc, c'est pour nous avons bien évidemment un climat méditerranéen, de caractère méditerranéen. Face à cette situation géographique, nous avons des défis. Nous avons plusieurs défis sur notre territoire. Je peux les regrouper en 6 défis majeurs. Le premier, celui de le stress hydrique, que nous connaissons d'une année, qui est en train de s'aggraver d'une année à une autre. Nous avons aussi le problème des érosion côtière et la montée du niveau de la mer. L'urbanisation rapide et la pression sur les écosystèmes, surtout au niveau de littoral. Nous vivons aussi le fléau les incendies des feux de forêt. Il y a aussi comme 5e problématique la biodiversité menacée, et enfin les événements climatiques extrêmes, les vagues de chaleur, etc. Face à ceci, notre région a des prérogatives au terme de la loi, parce que la loi au niveau national a donné aux régions des attributions propres, des attributions partagées avec les autres départements de l'État, et des prérogatives qui se sont transférées. Donc, la gestion de l'affaire environnementale, ça fait partie des missions propres de la région. Donc, nous avons une loi qui gère tout ça, surtout à travers les articles qui sont dédiés à la chose environnemental et au développement durable. Et à la lumière de cette loi, nous avons mis un plan d'action, un programme de développement régional qui s'étale sur la période 2022 jusqu'à 2027. Et le slogan, en quelque sorte, de ce PDR est comment faire de Tangier-Tetouan-Al Hoceima une région attractive et innovante, résiliente et inclusive, et leader en développement durable. Et nous avons bien sûr mis en place un axe dédié à l'environnement sur lequel nous travaillons sur l'aménagement des parcs, la construction des barrages, la protection contre les inondations, le programme d'appui aux populations vulnérables, etc. Mais tout ça, ça ne peut être réussi sans l'implication de la population. C'est pour ça que j'ai choisi le projet SLEC, Service local énergie-climat, pour illustrer l'effort de la région pour mettre en place un programme pour la population, mais avec la population. Donc le projet SLEC, c'est un projet à travers lequel nous voulons atteindre quelques objectifs, notamment renforcer la gouvernance climatique, améliorer la résilience de l'écosystème, inclure et faire participer la population locale et bien évidemment améliorer la prospérité et promouvoir l'innovation. Donc l'objectif principal de ce projet SLEC est double. Tout d'abord, la planification écologique concertée. Et deuxièmement, mettre des mécanismes de gouvernance, de sensibilisation et de l'éducation. Ça, ce sont les deux projets et ça rejoint un petit peu l'objectif numéro 11 des ODD qui met l'accent sur l'amélioration de la qualité de vie, surtout au niveau des villes. Donc pour nous, le projet SLEC, c'est un projet qui vise à mettre en place un espace d'échange entre tous les parties prenantes autour de la thématique comment on doit gérer la question environnementale et faire face au fléau des changements climatiques. C'est un projet qui coûte 3,6 millions d'euros, financé par l'Union européenne et dont une partie est financée bien sûr par les fonds propres de la région, avec une participation symbolique de la région de PACA en France. 3 objectifs spécifiques de programme. L'institutionnalisation d'un réseau de 8 SLEC à travers les provinces de la région, parce que la région est composée de 8 provinces, et au sein de ces 8 provinces, nous avons 146 communes. Donc l'idée, c'est qu'à chaque province, on met un bâtiment, un bâtiment SLEC qui va être le mécanisme pour véhiculer l'ensemble de programmes qu'on va dédier à la question environnementale. Le deuxième objectif spécifique, c'est d'institutionnaliser et de mettre en place un dialogue multi-acteurs qui engage à la fois les collectivités territoriales, les départements ministériels concernés, la société civile et la population locale. Le troisième objectif, c'est promouvoir, bien sûr, l'idée du SLEC. Et c'est l'exemple de cette réunion d'aujourd'hui, c'est pour convaincre les autres parties prenantes et les autres collectivités territoriales sur l'importance de l'approche participative dans la mise en œuvre des projets, notamment les projets environnementaux et climatiques. La logique d'intervention consiste de ce projet, tout d'abord, de faire un diagnostic, mais un diagnostic avec la population, un diagnostic participatif pour établir une feuille de route pour la déclinaison de SLEC. Deuxièmement, ça va passer par la construction. On est actuellement dans la phase de la construction de ces 8 bâtiments, à travers un appel à projet qui était destiné à l'ensemble des communes de la région. Aussi, nous avons mis en place un plan de formation. En fait, ce sont 2 plans de formation. Un plan de formation dédié aux acteurs territoriaux, c'est-à-dire les élus, et un autre dédié à la société civile. Et par la suite, on aura des espaces d'échange de toutes les parties prenantes autour de la même table. Et constituer, bien évidemment, ce réseau de SLEC. Donc, nous avons choisi 8 communes au sein de notre région et nous avons tenu des ateliers préparatifs pour le lancement. Avant le lancement, nous avons tenu au moins 16 réunions, à raison de 2 réunions au sein de chaque province pour mettre en place un plan d'action inclusif. Donc, comme je l'ai dit, à notre axe, celui de bâtiment, la construction. Et la construction, nous avons vu à ce qu'elle soit écologique et respecte les règles environnementales. Et dans l'exemple, bien évidemment, pour les autres, pour méditer cette expérience. Aussi, pour assurer la pérennité du projet, nous avons mis en place un comité qui va au-delà de l'exécution du projet, c'est-à-dire pour assurer la continuité par la suite. Et ce comité doit être formé, bien évidemment, avec la société civile et avec les élus locaux. Donc actuellement, on est dans une phase de la construction et la comme terme vers la fin de cette année. Et par la suite, nous avons commencé le travail pour mettre en place un plan d'action permanent dans le temps pour aborder ensemble les questions qui sont liées à la sécheresse, à l'inondation, les actions d'adaptation qui doivent être mettre en place par les citoyens et surtout que chaque programme doit être bâti avec les indicateurs, avec les objectifs et avec le consentement explicite des citoyens. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabie. I think we can all agree that the common denominator is, you can hear all the three panelists that have spoken so far have mentioned trainings, they have mentioned integration, how to empower communities, allowing them space in the rooms that we sit in. They are the people we do this for. So empowering them is the key to actually being able to have sustainable climate solutions. I would like to know your thoughts, Dr. Misrar. Your thoughts, given your work with Can Africa, your job is advocating for just and equitable energy transition. How do you think governance structures in climate finance need to be reformed to ensure African countries receive adequate and accessible funding for renewable energy projects? Allow me to mention to my panelists, you have 3 minutes to answer the questions, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, but that's not fair. So I'll start by probably introducing our campaign on 100 renewable energy in Africa. And this campaign was created at the Africa Energy Renaissance Conference that happened ahead of the Africa Climate Week and Africa Climate Summit 2 years ago in Nairobi. And why is it important for us, to talk about renewables? Because as Africans, more than 600 million don't have access to electricity, and more than 900 million don't have access to clean cooking. And when I'm talking about clean cooking, it's not only about protecting the environment or the climate, but it's also about our health, because it's affecting badly our health, especially women's health. And when we're talking about finance is important, of course. It's important to implement the 100 renewables energy. And this campaign actually is aligning with the African Union goal to achieve 100 renewables by 2050. Again, 2050 is a very optimistic goal, looking at the debt situation of the African nations. But it is feasible if we have the adequate and the resources, the financial resources that are needed to make this implementation feasible. But if we look at the numbers again, less than 1% in investments is reaching the African nations when it comes to just energy transition, which is very sad. Looking at the big resources when it comes to renewables, because in Africa we have, it's home to 60% of solar power, and it's home to 40% of world's minerals. Because minerals are, again, very important in this just energy transition. When we're talking about minerals, we're talking about extractions, and then we need to talk about human rights, because looking at what is happening now at DRC, it's very sad, because it's all about the minerals, it's all about the resources. We are not actually talking about a word that is just happening for the sake of it, but it's literally happening because there are some resources that are needed for the global north to be used in this transition. Apart from that, there is also the green hydrogen project that are coming to our African countries in order, let's say, to close the gap of this lack of access to electricity. But then if we look at it deeply, we are going to witness that the global north countries are just taking advantage of the resources that we are having here. Green hydrogen is going to be using a big amount of water, of our water resources. And our panelists were talking about the lack of water resources. We are going through floods, we're going through droughts, and here again, we are not even taking this into consideration and signing new projects. And I'm talking about, I'm not going to put the blame on Morocco again. As a Moroccan, I'm very happy to see that Morocco is initiating the green hydrogen projects that was signed recently. But again, we definitely need to think about the consequences, because are we going to get any of this green hydrogen as Africans, as Moroccans? I'm not sure about that. I don't have an answer to that, unfortunately. But again, what is important is not only climate finance, because we're always talking about climate finance, but it is also the technology transfer. Because if we have the technology transfer, we will be able to manufacture our own solar panels. Because if we go again to what is happening in our continent, we are importing more than 80% from China of our solar panels. Why can't we produce? Why can't we manufacture our own solar panels? Why can't we manufacture our own materials? And then when we are manufacturing, we can recycle. Because when you are importing, you don't know how to repair. You don't know the lifespan of these materials, and then you are creating another problem, which is waste management. How are you going to get rid of the solar panels when they're not going to be working anymore? So why can't we ask for climate finance? Of course, it's very important, but at the same time, we are also advocating for technology transfer, because it's needed. It's very essential, it's very important. Now, going back to climate finance. Climate finance is a term that is used a lot in the negotiations, but it's not defined. There is not a definition, a clear definition of what is climate finance. Of course, last year there were big negotiations about climate finance, and they were because the 10 years of the Paris Agreement ended, and then we had to replace the $100 billion but by a new climate finance goal, which is the NCQG, the new collective and quantified goal. But again, in Baku, it was very disappointing to see that the Global North are not actually engaged, and they're not, I would say, keeping their words. This is the problem. They are the ones that are polluting. As Africans, we are contributing to less than 3%. But we're facing the big challenges. We are at the forefront of the climate crisis. Why are we supposed to go through all of this and not getting anything from it? Climate finance is one of the solutions that can actually, it's not the only one, but that can, I would say, solve these issues when it comes to adaptation, when it comes to mitigation, when it comes to loss and damages. So yeah, it is needed. And it's our right to ask for it. It is our right to advocate for it. It's our right to push this agenda. And as an African bloc, the AGN, last year at the AMSEN, African Ministerial Conference on Environment and oh my goodness, I forgot the N, what it stands for. But they decided to ask for $1.3 trillion as climate finance, what is needed for us as Africans. But guess what? We just got $300 billion in Baku, which is an insult, which is very disappointing, which was a slap to our African countries, which was a slap actually to all the developing countries that are going through a lot, that are losing their lands, that are losing their lives, that are losing their families. So now what's the solution? Of course, there is a roadmap for COP30 in Belém, Brazil this year, which is called $1.3 trillion to keep the fight, to ask, for the 1.3 trillion that it is needed to tackle all these challenges. But again, is it going to happen? This is something that we are going to push for as CAN, Africa, as Can International, as the whole network. But again, we are not expecting too much from the global north countries because they had never honored their words, they had never kept their word, and this is so disappointing. But anyway, the fight is always there, and we are not going to give up. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Misrar. I would like to give Isaac just a chance to, when I said we'd be having real-world examples, Isaac is one of the people who has done something, worked on the Sekondi-Takoradi project in Ghana, and this is a real-world example. Just like to give a brief that they included 700 participants in a co-creation of a climate action plan. Mr. Isaac, what lessons can be applied to other regions that you learned while engaging the 700 plus citizens in the co-creation of the climate action plan?
Yeah, thank you. For us in Ghana and Sekondi-Takoradi, some of the lessons that others can draw from us is, one is the enabling environment for co-creation. When I talk of the enabling environment, that is the legal framework available for citizens to participate. We have what we call the Local Governance Act 936/2016. This Act, section 40 to 48, provides the guidelines and the framework for citizens to participate in the process of local governance. So, and also, we also have the Right to Information Act. We also have what you call the Popular Participation Framework, which was developed by the National Development Planning Commission to guide participation. So all these are the enabling environment that help us to engage these citizens, because it is in the law and it provides the avenue for you to engage. The second one that I'll talk about is the financial, human, and technical environment. And this one is key because co-creation is expensive. To be able to engage, engagement now in our settings is becoming expensive. And if you do not have the needed financial, human, and then the technical support, when I talk of the human, you need to get the right staff in place and the civil society to work together to be able to mobilize these people to participate. And also technical, at times we also need a technical support. For instance, co-creating this sustainable energy and sustainable energy access and climate action plan, you needed somebody who has the technical know-how to lead the team. So it's also a plus. Then the financial also go with it. Then political support. If the political economy do not support the process that you are doing, it becomes very difficult for you to achieve whatever you are doing. Then the next one has to do with diverse representation. In doing so, we're able to actively seek out and include diverse voices, which my colleagues has also spoken about, so for the sake of time. Then the next one has to be that we need to have be clear about the purpose and expectation of the participation. So we need to have a rare focus on the needs of these people and integrate it into the whole process of the engagement. Then we need to also have an early and meaningful engagement. We should not start the process, get to the middle before coming to engage. So involve citizens from the onset of the policy development, ensuring that their voices are heard and their needs are addressed. Then we also have, the last one I also talk about is a clear communication and feedback mechanism have to also be in place for you to actively engage the citizens to participate in the process. So you have to have a tailor-made develop communication plan for each of the group and ensure that there's a clear mechanism for the public to provide feedback on the climate policies and actions that you are putting in place. So these are some of the lessons that can be taken into account when doing this in other jurisdictions. Thank you.
Isaac, while you still have the microphone, allow me to ask, do you mind sharing with us briefly what are some of the tools or models that can be used to replicate your success in other African countries? And can you briefly also mention some challenges that you faced in ensuring transparency and inclusivity in this process?
Okay. I'll start with the challenges. The first one has to do with citizens' engagement fatigue due to government inability to meet their needs. It's a challenge for us in the developing part of the world because day in, day out, we go to the citizens to engage them. They want to see that there is a change in their lives. But you have engaged them in budget preparation. They have not seen anything. You come again, you want to do another plan. You are engaging them. You are engaging them today, tomorrow. But their needs are still not addressed. So it becomes difficult to mobilize them because they say that it is the old story that we are going to hear. We will tell you, you don't address them. So it was a very big challenge to, be able to mobilize the citizens to participate in the process. Another challenge has to do with the high citizens' expectation because they expect much from us, but we have little to offer. The resources are not there to meet their demands. Then politicization of issues. A lot of politics go into the issues that are being discussed. In our case, that was the period of the campaign. We had our election last year. So they tend to, although it's not a political platform, but when we organize such meetings, they tend to, politicize issues. And then the blame game, while the rare thing that we are discussing, trying to, put it off. So it was a big issue that we needed to address to let them know that this is not a political platform. It is a platform for us to come to find solutions to issues affecting us when it comes to climate issues. So some of the tools or the models that can be used. The first one, I would say that working with CSO networks is something that helps a lot because the CSO, the whole ecosystem of the CSOs has various groups or knowledge or capacity in the area. There are those that are good when it comes to mobilization of citizens, those who are good in supporting to mobilize resources and also providing technical assistance to the local government. So it's a key thing to look to. Then we also have to have engagement strategy for each of the group. Each group, you have to have engagement strategy because there are some that are elite, those in the middle class, then we have the vulnerable and then persons with disabilities. So we need to have engagement strategy to engage each and every group so that we can get what you want from them. But if you put all of them together, it becomes very difficult for you to get what you want. Then the final one, we can also leverage on the digital tools because engagement is becoming expensive. Although not all our constituents are they are active when it comes to the digital aspect, but there are some people, when you provide that avenue, they can also use that to, participate. Then those that cannot use it, then you have a direct engagement with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Misrar, allow me to come back to you. I know you were speaking on climate finance, but I think it's prudent for us to include the youth in this conversation. How can we strengthen accountability and amplify the youth voices to ensure more equitable, just, and sustainable climate solutions? How can we involve the youth in these conversations? The youth in the communities that we're trying to empower, the communities we're talking about, trying to integrate them into this system and into these conversations that we are having. Please go ahead and answer the question briefly.
Okay, so briefly, in 3 minutes is just for me. I would start by saying that youth are representing the energy, youth are the creativity, youth are the intelligence, the youth are the future. But then let's not forget about the women, because the women, as a young woman, I would say that women represent the hard work. Women represent the patience. Women represent the capacity, I would say, of this continent. So how do we engage these people in our discussions and to give them a seat at the table? Of course, I've mentioned that CAN is a big network, and it's a network of different organizations, not only I would say, civil society organizations, but also youth-led organizations, women-led organizations. And we are working all together to unify our words, to unify our actions, to unify our initiatives, because when we are working together, we are stronger. And that's the strength of the network, because you have a common position, and when you are presenting this position, I would say, at the different international or regional or even national conferences, then it makes a bigger impact, because you're not talking only on behalf of your organizations, but you are talking on behalf of the whole people that you are representing. And that's something that we are taking into consideration and we are very strict about. For the youth organizations, I will just speak briefly about one network that I am volunteering as a North Africa representative, which is Kayak, that I've introduced in the beginning, which is the Consortium of African Youth in Agriculture and Climate Change. And this consortium is a network of youth-led organizations working in agriculture and climate change. What we are doing with these organizations, with these people, we are trying to engage them, especially in the policy discussions, because it's very important. Yes, farmers, smallholder farmers are, I would say, the future of this continent, because the agriculture is the backbone of the African countries. We are relying mostly on agriculture. And if we are not aware of the different policies that are happening around us, not only at a national level, but also at a continental level, I will just give an example of the CADEP, which is the latest agenda when it comes to agriculture. So CADEP is the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, which is, I would say, changed every decade. And last January, the last meeting of CADEP was held in Kampala, in Uganda. And unfortunately, I would say that I didn't see many engagement from the youth, because they were, during the whole year, like to review the different last versions of CADEP, there were different working groups, and in these different working groups, like the youth, were the number of youth that were engaged in these discussions were very few, which is very disappointing. Again, what we are trying to do is to push, is to fight, is to also, one of the initiatives is also to do this kind of sign-on letters, like to probably make an impact to present it at the different African Union conferences, to the AGN, African Group of Negotiators, to the G77 plus China. So there are many blocks that we can identify and we can go to when needed, when we want to make an impact, when we want to be heard as young and women, and African women of this continent. So the future is in our hands, I would say. If we're not going to do anything about it, no one is going to help, or no one is going to volunteer. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Misrar. Mr. Rabie, allow me to just go to Ivy first, and then we'll come back to you. We will finish. You will give us the last remarks. Ivy, I just wanted to ask that considering you work with the communities, you have lived with the communities, you have practically even ate with the communities, so you understand what the role of data and knowledge sharing, the role that it plays. So my question is, how do we use data and knowledge sharing in building trust between communities and the governments? What are some of the things you think would actually help us to be able to get to help this and empower these communities that we have?
Thank you very much, Christine. The knowledge and data conversation is a very important conversation to have, especially in this digital era. Because for one, the digital era has made it very easy for people to access information on various platforms. It could be social media, it could just be other online platforms. But as we are able to access this information, it has also increased the risk for misinformation, which therefore means as governments and as practitioners in the sector, it is upon us to ensure that we get this information out there first, so that it is not about the youth having to go out there to ask for information, to ask about progress for projects, to ask about accountability and participating in these processes. So when we go to them with this information first, it ensures that they are acting from a point of knowledge. This ensures that when they are participating either in these community processes or in every other policy dialogue processes, they are participating from a point of knowledge, and a point of knowledge from the actual facts that we provide as a government and as other practitioners as well. So this therefore takes us to how do we ensure that this data that gets to our communities is accessible to all these communities. We are talking about including the marginalized. We are talking about including youth, including women, including persons with disabilities. It means that we have to take targeted approaches for us to be able to ensure that they are able to get this information in accessible formats. If we are talking about, for example, persons with disabilities, for example, I want to have an open session or a baraza in the community. How am I making deliberate effort to ensure that the community member who's deaf, who's come to participate, that they're able to actually listen in and participate in that conversation? How am I making a deliberate effort to provide my material in maybe Braille so that the PWDs are able to participate in this conversation? How am I making sure that these people are even aware that that conversation is happening in the first place? Because I cannot assume simply because we're in a digital era, it means that the person right down at the community level knows that I will be there on a particular day to have this conversation. How are we making this possible for all these people? So this calls for a whole of society approach. Let us allow even for our CSOs to help us in some of these actions and in some of these platforms as we take them. Let us allow them to be able to create an enabling environment for marginalized communities to participate. Let us allow them to put together forums. For example, let us allow our CSOs to be able to come together and bring youth together to have a conversation about climate change and how it's impacting them. Let us allow them to create an enabling space and a safe space for the persons with disabilities, for the women to have this conversation. And then from there, we are able to have a meaningful engagement as we do this in these processes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ivy. And I'll forward the last question to Fredrick. Fredrick, what accountability mechanisms can be used to strengthen our climate policies and have them implemented effectively and equitably? And while you answer that, what are the strategies that we can use to improve the alignment of local and national climate priorities while ensuring effective governance? Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, and I do sympathize with you a lot looking at the time, so I'll be very brief.
Thank you.
So, I mean, some of these things are obvious, and panelists have talked about them. Talking about strategies, of course, we have to strengthen communication and collaboration. We have to find out what Isaac is doing and do peer learning, understand how do we, what can we learn from each other to strengthen community participation. Multi-stakeholder engagement is very important, but it has to be based on actual representation and not just participation for optics, which is what most CSOs now do. We have to be very clear on joint planning and joint engagement. Capacity building has to be very key. And CSOs are always the bridge between government and communities, and they must rise to the occasion to play that role. We have to facilitate mainstreaming of climate action for integrated approach across all sectors. Climate change is not isolated. That is why we talk about addressing it in the context of sustainable development and efforts to eradicate poverty. So we have to ensure that all sectors have mainstreamed it. We have to ensure that we are strengthening the governance framework, the M&D systems that we have within our institutions, within the local governments, that we are proactively engaging with the local governments and communities to ensure that this is done. In terms of strengthening, very straightforward. Now we are working hard in the context of not having a clear definition of what climate finance is. We are trying to pursue coding and tracking of climate finance expenditure so that you can follow the money from the National Treasury up to what it does at the local level for you to have an idea of what actual climate financing actually went to climate-specific and climate-related expenditures. We have to improve coordination mechanisms. Civil societies are not doing what is expected of them in terms of bridging that gap. That needs to be done. We have to learn from experiences. Do this, learn from it, improve the coordination so that data flows, information flows to facilitate reporting. Decision-making processes, I told you the dilemma at the local government level, power versus community. We have to ensure that we get a template that works better for our local communities for their meaningful engagement. And of course, we have to ensure that we establish proper mitigation and adaptation strategies to M&D systems to track against our long-term goals. You are all aware that Kenya has made commitments under the Paris Agreement. The nationally determined contribution has to be implemented. It has to be done from the local level, because that is where action takes place. I have to report what has been done. That is what my office is set up to do. If I don't get that information, then there is nothing to report. And the biggest problem actually is reporting climate financing that civil societies receive. That has been my biggest headache, yet it is the largest amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In this moment, I'd like to just ask my audience. Are we together, audience? That sounds very weak. Are we together, audience? We are? All right, I can see a hand behind there. Do you want to join the open chair? Or is that a question? It's a question. So give me a moment, just a moment. I'd like to ask the last question to Mr. Rabie, and then I will get back to your questions in a minute, all right? So Mr. Rabie, just kindly give us one very strong lesson that we can all take home to our respective workplaces, to what we do in our day-to-day lives, that you have learned from the project in Morocco. Just very briefly, you have 1 minute, please.
Oui, ok, je vais être très bref. La leçon majeure qu'on peut tirer de comment on peut réussir des projets participatifs, c'est la question de deux choses. Tout d'abord, avoir une vision très claire par rapport à ce qu'on veut faire. Une vision claire avec une feuille de route. Deuxièmement, la confiance. La confiance, c'est une condition sine qua non si on veut réussir un projet collaboratif entre les collectivités territoriales et la société civile. Il faut bâtir cette confiance, et à la base de cette confiance, on peut faire beaucoup de choses. Mais sans confiance, on ne peut pas avancer. C'est pour ça que les 2 ingrédients pour réussir notre travail en matière de changement climatique, c'est d'abord avoir une vision partagée et bien claire, et deuxièmement, avoir une confiance très solide entre les parties prenantes. J'espère que le message est bien clair. Merci.
I think you've gotten that. Trust is important in what we're doing. Trust and accountability. I will go into I see no one wants to come sit with us at the front here. Are there any volunteers for an open chair? Someone who has a very strong experience that want to share, that they'd want to speak on? Okay, I see someone coming to the stage. I'll give her 2 minutes to speak. While we're preparing for her to come on here, I would like to we will go straight into the Q&A session. In this Q&A session, I would just request you stand up, you introduce yourself, let us know who the question is directed to, and make it very brief. Thank you. I'm so sorry I'm saying make it brief. It's because time is not on our hands. So please bear with me. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what experience this is that you want to share with us, what insight that you want to give us in terms of this session.
Thank you very much. Olive Kabatoi, sorry, I have a cold. I'm Olive Kabatoi. I work with COST, the Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, and I'm the Africa Regional Manager and Learning Lead at the International Secretariat. When we talk about climate and environment, this is a serious issue that we should talk about seriously and not just juicily. Yes, I want to emphasize this. In the last 5 months, we are focused on infrastructure. We had a modeling exercise in Kampala, and we're looking at 10, it's a pilot, we're looking at 12 infrastructure projects in the city. And the results from this modeling exercise are alarming, in that, there's a lot of money being invested in climate finance and mitigation globally. And Africa, as by 2022, Africa had $44 million invested. But when you look at how much comes into the communities in actual service delivery, it's limited. Now, what was amazing in the data that we received is government officials, public institutions themselves cannot define that this project has a climate finance objective. So if they don't know that these projects have climate finance objectives, how will they engage the citizens? And how will they implement? But they are the ones who procure these projects, but they don't know that this was the objective as to why the projects were brought into the community. We went further to validate these findings in the communities. We had 3 barazas in 3 divisions in Kampala. We had over 300 citizens, and I facilitated these conversations myself, but I was shocked. Citizens don't know anything. They were not involved in project appraisal and selection. They don't know whether this project is going to affect their environment and what are the results. And all these projects are completed. Now we are having floods. People are sleeping in floods. If you've been on social media, you saw yesterday, Kampala was a mess. It rained. Nobody could cross anywhere to go to the city center because it's flooding. People are sleeping in floods. There are no projects have no sanitary facilities. There are a lot of issues. So it's very important, as we emphasize this issue of climate and environment, to also, I liked what she said, I've forgotten the name, on information. Data is very critical. So at COST, we've made life easy, and we've developed a module that can help governments track climate finance investments. And this is an open source module. We do not charge any government to use it or civil society. It's just a framework that shows you which kind of information you can track or government officials can collect and publish on climate finance investments. And we are happy to share that information with all those stakeholders who are interested in tracking climate finance investments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please allow me to ask your name again.
Olive.
Olive. Olive, I want to commend you. That is very bold. I love that you're speaking for the people in your country, in your community, and the challenges that we're facing. I want you to realize that she's speaking on issues, climate crisis. There's flooding. There's people who do not understand or even know they've not been put into these rooms where we're having these conversations again. This is why we're here, to make sure that we are empowering them. Allow us to go into the Q&A session. I can see a few hands. I will take 5 questions. So I'll start with a lady here. Can I please have someone pass the microphone around, please?
Thank you, Christine, and the panelists for such an insightful conversation. My name is Mariam. I work with Development Gateways, an organization working on the intersection of data, technology, policy to enable evidence-based decision-making. So I was really pleased to hear the conversations around the importance of data in this conversation. I had 2 things, but I'll try and merge it into one maybe. For Dr. Misrar, I was really pleased to hear you talk about reminding us to hold the line when it comes to the conversations on climate finance, but also emphasizing the importance of women in this space. So, because I believe in gender-responsive climate finance. How can African countries and institutions in the road to Belém position ourselves strategically, ahead of COP30? That is my question. Fredrick, linked to that road, what are some of the evidence gaps that negotiators and country-led delegations and maybe the technical bodies face that, what are some of the gaps you see that can help with these conversations and negotiations ahead of COP30? Thank you.
All right, I'll have one more question. I'll have that question. The gentleman behind there, sorry.
Thank you. I first want to say thanks to the panelists. My name is Lawrence Yilu, and I work for Accountability Lab, and I'm from Liberia. And I'm hearing a very good conversation across the sitting, but what I'm struggling to comprehend is decentralization vis-a-vis devolution of power. When it comes to citizen engagement and the voices of citizens, as sometimes when we say civil society, getting to communities, we are talking more about the conversation having, being held by civil society with the community. But what I'm struggling to understand is that sometimes government projects the issue and try to lay the prior consent, especially in mining communities, and then pollution of the soil, pollution of the river, all those things at the feet of civil society when they have their role to play. So my question along that line is the fact that what are the functional dispensational conversation for both government, civil society, and I like, Doctor, I like your conversation around climate financing. But what good is climate financing when the indicators for those funding are coming from donor organizations outside of the local communities? But we are saying localization when the indicators to being designed is not being designed along with the local communities, but sometimes it's designed in DC, it's designed in Berlin, it's designed in Brussels, and away from the people. Sometimes it's designed in the capital cities of our communities, and the communities are left out, but we take these indicators to them to measure them when the people, the languages that we are speaking are foreign, and the conversation we are speaking, they are grammars, whether we are speaking French, whether we are speaking English. So those are my 2 questions. What exactly a devolution of power in terms of decentralization. And I think, my brother, there, this question is directly for you because you talk more about Kenyans' experience and the decentralization. What does that mean in practical terms? And then climate financing and the indicators. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll have the two questions. The lady in yellow, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Vera Abinado from Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana. A quick one on infrastructure. We've seen a lot of infrastructure in our cities, and they are cutting down a lot of trees. My issue is, how do we ensure that the Department of Roads Engineers, there's the conversation that as we develop, as we construct the roads, new structures, how do we ensure that even if we have to cut the trees, we are planting, so that by the time the road is done, we have the trees. A lot of sunshine in our cities, especially in the capital cities, when it rains, everything is happening that we are not able to have that conversation. So I'm not sure in the room if we have the engineers here, the contractors who are constructing our cities and developing. In Ghana, we have an issue with our illegal mining we call galamsey. Our water is being polluted, and we have been left alone. That collaboration, solidarity, partnership, because if Ghana is affected, it may be just Ghana, but we'll be looking for you to come and look for water. And you come to Ghana, you buy things. When our waters are polluted, our food are also being polluted. And so that framework, that regional framework, that ensures that we are all in this together, and such that we do not leave countries alone. We need to hear the voices of African Union, voices of the ECOWAS in the region. We have not heard anything. We are not getting any support from anywhere. The state is suffering. Young people on the street to protest, and some young people, my colleagues who were on the streets, were even arrested because they were fighting for clean environment and clean water bodies. Last one is on plastic, that we have polluted our water bodies, the farmlands, our ocean with plastics. Can we look at even starting somewhere small, multinationals in the supermarkets, can they look at paper bags? In other states, if you go in the other developed states, they do it. Even if you need a bag, you have to pay for it. But we have left them in our cities, and they are taking a lot of things, giving us a lot of plastic. You buy an item in the supermarket, and they are putting the soap in this, they are putting, but you get home and you have like 10 or more plastics. What are we doing with that? How do government ensure that we are actually taking steps to control the use of plastic? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Allow me to just ask you, who among the panelists?
Governments, any of them.
Any of them? Okay, very well. All right, and the last question. Is there anyone at the back there? I can see a gentleman at the far end, at the back, please. At the back, yes.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Michael. I'm a data protection expert from the government of Kenya, but also a native from one of the areas in Kenya that have been affected by climate change. And my question is just a question or maybe a comment directed to all the speakers, but mostly to Dr. Wafa, who spoke passionately about climate financing. I was just wondering, is it possible that rather than focusing so much or emphasizing so much on financing, will it help if we change strategy, especially those who are on the front, fighting for these things? Is it possible that we double down on climate justice? Because I feel that the more we speak of climate finance, I feel like those in the global north get an upper hand, because in the end they will just put in some money, and we all know that that money is never enough to do what we need to do and what we need to achieve. So probably we need to emphasize more on climate justice, double down on that, and the finances will definitely follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Just one last question. There's a gentleman here who has been, yes, here at the front. That's the last question. Please allow me. And we can give our able panelists 1 minute each to answer the questions addressed to them, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Francis Kerr. I'm from African Alliance for Health Research Economic Development. Mine is just to tell you, the team on the front of us, that we need also to compel our governments to set aside funds for the climate change. We should not depend on donors always, because we have now key studies on USAID now. We need also to compel our governments that let's start from our country so that we can fundraise from our budget towards the climate change. My second point is, I was just talking to one of the government officials from the government, and they were just telling me that, in this, especially we have 54 countries in Africa, we don't have managers, we have politicians. And sometimes we pass some laws towards the climate change, and they don't want to follow. They are just politicians who are just there for, let me say, for around 10 years to 5 years in power. So they don't care about the climate change. So it's time's up. Professional people, we need to come up with our own laws. We need to compel the politician to make sure that they walk the talks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to start with Dr. Misrar. Please address the questions. Please answer the questions addressed to you.
Thank you. So I'll start with Mariam. And for the position, our position for this year as CSOs, as African CSOs, I believe that we've lost enough last year. It's not even last year. For the last few years, we've been losing. Our demands were not taken into consideration. Our demands were never heard, and that's really something that we need to emphasize and we need to work on all together. And I believe that from last year, the biggest loss was on the NCQG, which is the 300, because at first, when they started negotiating, so I will just go from the beginning. So from the Paris Agreement, it was agreed $100 billion to tackle, as a climate finance goal, to tackle all the climate crisis, going to work to the developing countries, like just to tackle all the challenges, the consequences of climate change. Now, when we started the negotiations last year, they started to deviate and just to change the subjects and just to talk about the quantum. We, as developing countries, we wanted to know the quantum, how much is needed for us to tackle the climate crisis, but they didn't want to talk about that. But they wanted to talk about who's supposed to give the money, where the money is supposed to be coming from. And this is one of the problematic issues, because then if we're talking about the polluters, then we need to take into consideration China. China is not considered as a developed country, because if you look at the GDP, if you are dividing it into the population, then it's considered as a developing country. Then China is not supposed to pay. But then it's one of the biggest polluters. Then they're supposed to pay. Then, when they're talking about the contributor base, that's one of the challenges that we were going through as developing countries, because we are not going to agree on anything if we keep just, trying to deviate the talking and the discussions. Now, we know who's supposed to give the money. It's very obvious from the Paris Agreement that the polluters are supposed to pay for the damages. This was very obvious, but then they started all talking about, rubbish and just talking about things that don't even existed, that it's not included in the Paris Agreement. Now, the $100 billion were supposed to be ended, like the agreement ended on 2024. And then we needed a new climate goal, new climate finance goal, which is the new NCQG. And the NCQG is supposed to be replacing the $100 billion. At first, they offered $200 billion, which is doubling what they gave 10 years ago. Is $200 billion going to be enough to cover all the damages for the whole developing countries? It's not only for Africa, of course not. Then, when we refused and rejected the deal, they gave again $300 billion, and that was the final statement. Of course, we rejected, but there was nothing that we could do at the time. So now for the next COP30 in Belém, we're definitely not going to accept. We need to review the statement of the NCQG because $300 billion is an insult, as I've mentioned. It's not going to cover anything. And I believe that Michael even talked about the money, the climate finance, whatever is going to be given, it's not going to be enough. That's not true. Because there were calculations that were made last year at the AMSEN. And the AGN, the African Group of Negotiators, Muhammad Ali, the chair, His Excellency mentioned that we need, as Africans, $1.3 trillion. This is to cover mitigation, to cover adaptation, and to cover loss and damage. So this is what needed. But we were given $300 billion. It's not even half of it. It's just the 0.3 that we were given, not even the 1 trillion, which is very sad. Now, the position, we need all to be agreeing on the 1.3. That's our goal for COP30. This is what we're supposed to be asking, and this is our demands. We're not going to change it. We need to be unified, and we need to be to have one voice. Because as I said before, if we are together, then we're going to be making a bigger impact. And on the questions that Lawrence asked, as the decisions are always made outside of our continent, and I will give just a funny example, actually, that happened last year, which is the Clean Cooking in Africa Summit. So it's a Clean Cooking in Africa Summit that was held in Paris. Why? So, of course, to restrict the civil society to be attending this summit and to be able to make our own decisions and to be able to define our future when it comes to clean cooking. And guess what? The contributions that were made in that summit, it was coming from Shell and Total. How clean is it? I don't know. It's fossil fuel. It's not clean, it's not renewables, it's dirty things. And because we are not there, we were not able to say anything about it. We just accepted the pledges that were made, and people were clapping. People were so happy because it was probably $300 billion that were pledged at that time. And people were very happy because finally we're going towards clean cooking in Africa. Really? How? Another thing that I would love to mention is on that, actually. There is the initiatives. I don't know if you've heard about Mission 300 initiatives from the World Bank, is to give access to more than 300 million people in Africa access to electricity. Yeah, we were happy about that. Finally, the World Bank is doing something great because it's just going to be given electricity and access to electricity to more than 300 million Africans in the sub-Saharan region. Yes, but then when we looked at it, it was mainly from gas. It wasn't renewables. And when they justified themselves by it cannot be done just by using renewables, we definitely need to make a mix, which is not making any sense. If you're talking about clean and sustainable future, there is no fossil fuel in sustainable and in clean and in, I would say a beautiful future that we all hope to have. On plastic, I would say that yes, it is very important to talk about plastic pollution because we are becoming the dust, like the bin of the global north countries when it comes to plastic pollutions. And every single year there is the INC, what we call the Intergovernmental Negotiations Committee happening, and a lot of money is invested to gather people just to talk about recycling. Is recycling a solution? It has never been a solution. Because plastic, when we're talking about solutions, it's supposed to be cut from the source. No plastic anymore. We're not even producing it, but we are the bin. Everything is coming to us from the global north countries. And this is not acceptable. We need to know what is happening around us. We need to be aware that it is not going to be happening anymore, because now we know. Probably before the old generations were happy because they were just signing some contracts and some, I would say, to get some money from what is happening in their continents. Of course, they will accept the money in exchange to be the bin of the North countries, but then it's not acceptable anymore because we're suffering and we're not going to accept that for us and nor for the future generations. Michael, on climate justice. Yes, climate justice is very important. We need to talk about climate justice. And one of the justices is to be paid for the damages that they are doing to us. This is justice. We're not contributing to it. We need to be paid. And I'm not saying that being paid is only what is needed. Because when we're talking about being paid, then it's going to be talking about carbon credit again. And it's a form of false solutions that the global north countries are trying to make or just to propose because they're going to continue polluting and in exchange to plant trees just to make this is not justice. So climate justice and climate finance is part of it. We can't talk climate justice without climate finance. Yeah, of course, whatever the money that is going to be given is not going to be enough because we're losing lives. And not a single amount is going to be replacing, the life of people that we are losing. That's, of course, not going to happen. Because we are losing loved ones, we are losing our families, we are losing our lands, and nothing can replace that. But at the same time, we need money to adapt, we need money to mitigate, and we need money to be able to advance our work and to advance our strategies and our initiatives and to implement what is needed in our continent. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Misrar. I think she's answered most of the questions, but I'd like to just have Fredrick answer the one question one of the questions addressed to him.
Thank you, Doctor, for responding to all the questions. Yeah, I had 4 questions addressed to me, but I'll respond to just one. That the gentleman who had asked, the one has already left, so I'll not speak to that. In terms of capacity gaps for negotiations, I think in Africa we are quite well organized. The challenges we have are more or less resources for our negotiators to be present when we are having negotiations. But we have very strong national teams that then are organized under the African group of negotiators. And this is where I disagree with Misrar. We never lose in negotiations. Negotiations is 190 foreign policies interacting. And it's a lot of work to get what we get. And we don't live in we live in a very brutal geopolitical system where nobody gives you anything for free. Nobody gives you charity.
Everybody cares about the group and development of their people. And that is the best we can always get when we get it. There's a lot of political play when it gets to the decision making that sometimes are beyond the technical, but some concessions are made that are dear parts. So that is just the dynamics view about it. And then just finally on the issue of domestic financing for climate. I think if you look at the landscape report by CPI, one is African countries have contributed 90% of work for. Developing countries have contributed 90% of the work for trivial priors and not zeroids, using the definition that applied. So we're financing. If you look at the Kenyan distribution where it will call separate, those are counted as domestic finance. We are contributing all for all credit financing that we are receiving from international institutions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Allow me to just give the key takeaways for this session that we just had. On your tummy together. Last week, are we together? Yeah. When I spoke of thought-provoking, I think you can see from our panelists how bold they are in terms of addressing some of these issues, from climate finance to climate crisis, where all you came and addressed climate crisis and says this is our problem. These are some of the things we need to talk about. So I think it's prudent for me to just go on and say that some of the key takeaways are that transparent climate policies should be accessible to communities in a language they understand.
with open communication and independent audits for accountability. That is something that was spoken of a lot. Governments must ensure meaningful public participation by integrating diverse voices and providing capacity building programs. Remember, we've spoken about having conversations in the language that our communities understand, whether indigenous, marginalized, if it's the disabled people, the women, the youth, we need to speak in their language for us to have an impact. We need to have alignment in national and local priorities. We need stronger communication, joint planning, and mainstreaming climate policies across all sectors, which can therefore improve governance. We need to have accountability in finance, so clear financial coding, proper reporting, and ensuring funds reach local communities are key for equitable policy implementation. We need to empower marginalized communities. We know this by having them trained, given them financial support, and their very representation in decision-making to create effective climate solutions. We have to have reliable data shared and made accessible through targeted approaches to prevent misinformation and ensure informed decision-making. And finally, we'll have more funding is needed for renewable energy in Africa, as Dr. Misrar had said. And the youth need to be involved in this conversation. Because again, you have seen an uprising with the Generation Z, Gen Z is what we call them. They are the voices now because they know that this world we're living in with the climate agenda, climate crisis, decarbonization happening, global warming, that they know this is a world we are going to live in. This is the world we're bringing our children into. So we have to also give them a platform to share their thoughts. I'd like us to give a round of applause to our panelists. I'll get to a round of applause if I get this, please. My panelists, I want to thank you for honoring the invites, for sharing your insights. We really do appreciate you. Keep doing a good job. Again, we need to be bold for us to be able to empower. Before we empower, we need to empower ourselves with education, equip ourselves with knowledge and wisdom for us to be able to combat these issues that we're having in climate finance, in governance, and in terms of empowering our communities. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining our session. Abed, please enjoy your lunch. It has been awesome. Abed, my name is Christine, and I'll just go moderator. Thank you very much.